folks, we're just going to give everybody a minute to get logged in, get your audio working to make sure you can hear me today, and then we'll dive in. We did this in a bit of a meeting format. We wanted to give folks the opportunity to be able to see each other. So feel free, if you'd like to leave your camera on, you can, but absolutely no pressure. If you're not comfy, if you're eating lunch, I know it is lunchtime. So if you're eating lunch, feel free. Unless you already know, I won't be calling on you. We do have, a volunteer today who, volunteer or victim, I'm not sure how you want to say that, but from one of our project partners from phase 1 who will speak as well. But there'll be no surprise call outs for anybody. So maybe I will dive in. And so today, just welcome everybody. So today's session, we're going to be talking about our EBus Phase 2, and this is in partnership with AIEQ. Marie may be able to join us to be able to just introduce herself for a moment, but we partner with them on this particular project going forward. And Christina, if you want to go to the next slide. All right, so I'm going to start with land acknowledgement, but before I do, we do have some items here that are listed. So beyond just giving land acknowledgement, CUTRIC likes to have some actions behind that. So here on the list, I won't read this because any folks who come into our meetings are probably pretty familiar with this read, but I encourage you while I'm doing the land acknowledgement, if you want to read through, and maybe consider some of these types of things for your organization as well. So, I acknowledge that I am a guest on Treaty 6 territory, homeland of the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and Nakota Sioux in Edmonton, while I come from the ancestral lands of the Mi'kmaq in Nova Scotia, Mi'kmaqui. I encourage folks as well today on the call to take an opportunity to learn about the traditional practice of gifting tobacco as a sign of respect and gratitude to the Indigenous peoples whose land we reside on. You can move to the next slide. A little bit of Zoom housekeeping. I know at this point, folks are probably very familiar with Zoom, but there are some features here that are helpful, raising hand, chats, as well as the live transcript. And if you would like to leave in the bottom corner, and I know Zoom likes to do updates, so depending on what version you're in, it may look a little different. I know I now, instead of the big red button, I have a little fancy red with an X in it in case I want to leave. Next slide, please. So I'm going to start off today with some introductions, an overview of our phase 1. This is a fairly high-level overview of that phase. Talk about the scope of work for our phase 2, as well as next steps, and then we're going to talk a bit about CUTRIC's membership. Next slide. So introductions, I'm just going to do a quick look here. I'm not seeing Marie has been able to join us yet. If she is able to join a bit later, what I'm going to do is I'll give her an opportunity at that point to be able to introduce herself and just say hi to everyone. I know she's been pretty booked solid lately. So I am Jess Smith. I am the manager of commercialization and operations here at CUTRIC, and I am the project manager for our EBus Phase 1, which is closed earlier this year, as well as our EBus Phase 2, which we're officially getting ready to kick off, and our EBus Phase 3, which I will talk very briefly about as well, just to get some excitement there. So we're doing a bit of a parallel launch with our Phase 2 and our Phase 3. So next slide, and I will turn it to my colleagues who are on the line to also introduce themselves.
I guess I'll go first. So my name is Christina Petricic. I am the administrative coordinator here at CUTRIC. Thank you so much for coming to our session today, and it's lovely to meet everyone.
Thanks, Jess and Christina, and hello everyone. My name is Majdi Al-Sadiq, and here at CUTRIC, I lead the business development and membership engagement.
Wonderful. And as we flip to the next slide, we're going to start with an overview of phase 1. Now, when we move into the next slide, you're going to see a wonderful little video. It's about 3.5 minutes long. It'll give you a bit of a summary of the work, but then I'm going to go into some of the details as well. Next slide, and you can play the video.
CUTRIC's Pan-Canadian battery electric bus demonstration and integration trial was a world-first innovation project that standardized the charging systems from different manufacturers. The project created the foundation for successful interoperability between bus and charging manufacturers and has set the world stage for future collaboration for charging standards and battery electric bus deployments. Launched in 2016, the Pan-Canadian Battery Electric Bus Demonstration and Integration Trial used vehicles and infrastructure from New Flyer, Nova Bus, ABB, and Siemens to successfully deploy 18 buses and 7 chargers in Vancouver, Brampton, and York region.
This is really an ongoing process. And so while we're really excited that all the stakeholders, including ourselves, are finally deploying zero-emission buses at scale, and we're finally reaching that critical mass, this is still very much a learning experience, and we're happy to be with our customers and with other stakeholders along the way to make sure that we get the best product and that we get to net zero.
During the course of the trial, transit agencies saw a total savings of 2,341 tons of carbon, equivalent to 263,400 gallons of consumed gas.
But on these pieces of new technology that we're bringing into operations that are new for some of these suppliers to bring out to the market, this ecosystem that we created through the EBus pilot has been really helpful for us to establish even stronger relationships, because we're both in it for long-term success.
To be able to really make an impact on climate change, we need to be able to generate momentum. And momentum is generated by like-minded companies getting together and taking action. And this is what we're doing with CUTRIC, and this is what this Pan-Canadian project represents.
The trial has accelerated and drastically reduced the cost of transit electrification across Canada, bringing the country closer to a net zero future.
Above all, this has been an opportunity to learn together. Transit agencies, bus builders, infrastructure providers, coming together to pioneer, test, to learn, and ultimately to make transit electrification work here in Canada.
The Pan-Canadian Electric Bus project has been going on for over 5 years from start to finish. There was a lot of planning work, a lot of lobbying, a lot of government advocacy, and for the last 3 years has been mostly monitoring the 18 buses and 7 overhead chargers that are in Brampton, Vancouver, and York region to see how they're actually operating. Standardization leads to interoperability, and that means the buses and the chargers are built to the same specifications. They can plug and play. That leads to more competition, leads to prices reducing. That's what we all want in transit, and that is what the Pan-Canadian Electric Bus Demonstration and Integration Trial achieved.
All right. So as we look at some of those details, I know that was a really wonderful overview, but publicly this project was launched in 2019. So if you see here on your screen, there's a few clippings of articles as those were released, and you can move to the next slide. So we had a variety of project partners from transit agencies with Brampton Transit, TransLink, York Region Transit, manufacturers. We had New Flyer, Nova Bus, ABB, and Siemens as project partners. And then from a utility side, we had Newmarket Power Distribution Limited as well. And then we were as the research organization. Move to the next slide. So this particular project, it was the first in the world for high-powered chargers. The main part of this project for phase 1 was to standardize one technical standard and demonstrate interoperability with the buses and the high-powered chargers. So interoperability is just referring to the ability for buses and chargers made by different manufacturers to work together seamlessly and effectively with no need for additional modifications or customizations. This project used the OptiCharge protocol that was developed by the Volvo Group in Europe, which was shared in open source and modified for the North American deployment. And it went from the OptiCharge to the J3105, and CUTRIC was actually part of the standards committee for J3105 with the Society of Automotive Engineers, and providing data and information. And as a result of this project, standardization is no longer the same issue because this project was able to work through those issues. Next slide, please. So here is an overview. As you see, we've got our 3 transit organizations. We show here just a visual representation. We anonymize the actual manufacturers for the different pieces of equipment. But you'll see here, TransLink, they were doing 1 route. They had 2 of the overhead chargers, and they had 4 buses. And if you look at YRT had 1 of the chargers, and we started with 2 routes, but that had growth to a grand total of 20 routes, actually. So there was growth within, and you'll see the buses that are in the dotted line. So originally we started with 6, and then they added an additional 6 buses into this study as well. With Brampton, there were 2 routes, 4 overhead chargers, and 8 buses. Next slide. So as we look at the empirical analysis reports, they were completed throughout the project. And then we had a goal throughout this of 30 months of data for each transit agency. So you'll see here the span for each transit agency that we collected that data that was then input into our system. And actually, if you want to flip to the next slide, I can talk very quickly around the different types of data that we collected. So total power data from the bus and those third-party loggers, pre-charging downtime, after charging downtime. We use GPS data to actually be able to verify if it was en route charging or in depot charging. Accelerator pedal data, that's one of those wonderful things for regenerative braking we looked at, as well as the data that was coming directly off of those chargers. Next slide. And here is just a high level, without going into a whole lot of the details of what we've seen. Again, just a bit of summary of the different buses, the routes, the infrastructure, on how many charges we had, as well as G savings during the course of this project for each of those transit agencies. And then we'll go to the next slide. And in this opportunity, so I'm going to give Brampton, Scott Gilmer, I know you're here somewhere, I seen you earlier. I'm going to give you an opportunity to speak to a moment. We do have a short little clip here from information that Gerald has showed previously. So if we want to go ahead, we can play this little 30-second clip, and then we can turn the floor over to Scott. All right, Scott, I feel like that was a really good walk-up theme for you. I will turn it over to Scott. Brampton was one of the project partners, and Scott is wonderfully someone who has been with us for this entire ride through EBus Phase 1, and I'll hand the floor to you.
Perfect. Can you hear me okay, Jess?
We can.
Great. So Jess asked me to kind of speak to everybody today about our experience with Phase 1. And I guess for those that haven't dabbled with electric buses, as of yet, I guess the question is, where do you start? I mean, it's a huge onion to start peeling back the layers on. And I think, you know, without Brampton joining the CUTRIC trial, you know, we probably could have done it, but definitely not done it as well as we did. And I think, you know, a few benefits for me that really stood out as we participated with CUTRIC through this process, as Jess mentioned from the very early days, Going back as early as 2015, we started working with CUTRIC on this. So we've been in the trenches with it for some time, and I can tell you based on our learnings and experience, CUTRIC's GR government relations work, their advocacy work is just exceptional. I think, in fact, this project probably couldn't have proceeded the way it had without CUTRIC's GR team involved, and they have a really unique way of educating, yet at the same time influencing, our funding partners. And I think that really, for us, the project wouldn't have gotten off the ground as well as it did without their GR work. So that's definitely one key benefit that we saw working with CUTRIC through that process. And that included some, cancellation of funding by the provincial government that was committed to the project. When the Ford government was elected, they pulled that funding, leaving us with a gap of about $8 million in our project. And CUTRIC was able to, in fact, further advocate with the federal government, and they picked up the share of that. So for Brampton's portion of the phase 1 trial, it was about a $16 million project in total. And the federal government ended up funding 70% cost of that as a result of CUTRIC and Brampton's advocacy work on that. So pretty unique project in that stance. I doubt we'll ever see that again, so we'll take it as it comes. But I guess maybe the second thing for us was really that it really allowed us to establish that initial trust factor with our senior leadership team, our council, and in fact, the federal government as well, having CUTRIC, working alongside with CUTRIC on this. They really established that trust factor as the organization that they represent. I guess the third piece would be around risk sharing, both from a cost sharing and delivery perspective. Obviously, if you can share the risk and not take it on yourself, that's a good thing. And definitely this was the case with our project partners involved in phase 1. We all shared in that early days risk, understanding what those risks were, and moved that forward accordingly. The next one would be program management. For those of you that don't have staff on board to manage a program like this, CUTRIC staff was, again, very, very good at managing our overall program, including our project steering committee. There was technical committees, public affairs committees. So it was a really well-structured governance piece that CUTRIC managed for us. The fifth one is around data. And so what you'll find when you start dabbling in electric buses is a lot of the OEMs offer their own proprietary charge management or data management sources, whether it be on the bus side or the charger side. And what you'll quickly find out is that not all things equal themselves at the end of the day. And so I think from a data perspective, CUTRIC provided Brampton with empirical data collection, reporting, and analysis on a quarterly basis. And that really helped us establish, again, that trust factor with our data. We ended up being about 98% accurate across all systems, which to us is acceptable. So it really gives you a good sense in terms of what data set you should be using and why. And so we continue to use CUTRIC for that purpose, and we'll do so until, I think, June 2025. Our contract ends with them, and then we'll look at either renewing it, bringing it in-house, or maybe going to RFP or something at that point. But without their assistance in that initial phase 1, we would have been, we definitely wouldn't have learned as much as we did without CUTRIC providing that service for us. It also helped us establish our initial learnings and methodology for calculating and understanding GHGs. So again, this is a very complex web. Are you talking operational GHGs? Are you talking life cycle emissions? What's the difference between the two? How does that impact your overall carbon footprint within your organization? How is the rest of your corporation or organization reporting GHGs, making sure that it's consistent, that the methodology is solid, and that you have a plan moving forward, as a basis. So you're not going back and rebaselining calculations years down the road that perhaps may have been incorrect. So I think that was definitely a positive. Sharing the lessons learned, CUTRIC managed an issues and problem registry for us, which helped us resolve issues and problems with our OEM partners. I guess maybe second to last would be the influence of the vendor community. So CUTRIC was able to pull multiple competing OEMs together into our project, both on the bus and charger side, and we were able to do it in such a way that their IP was protected, but at the same time, we were able to achieve that ultimate goal of interoperability that Jess spoke about earlier, and that was highlighted in the video. So really, that's the feather in the cap for this phase one project, was the ability for multiple competing OEMs in a very competitive space to work together with transit agencies and come up with a shared interest and define that interoperability. And then the last one is really around public relations and a common PR focus. There's a lot of messaging around electric buses, some good, some bad. We had some initial, when we initially launched our trial, there was some public feedback questioning the safety of electric buses from electromagnetic field perspective. So, this lady that was writing in, her husband had a pacemaker and was asking, is it safe to be on the bus? Is it safe to be near the charger? And quite frankly, we didn't know the answer to that. So we turned to CUTRIC and our OEM partners to help provide responses to those types of questions. So really managing the PR perspective from a program level is helpful because, again, you share that risk and avoid some potentially embarrassing public messaging getting out there. So I think I've said enough, Jess. I don't know. I could probably go on, but I think those are really kind of the 9 top things for me that really stood out in our participation in phase one. And yeah, just hats off to the CUTRIC team, and certainly looking forward to learning more about phase two and what that might mean for Brampton specifically, and making that decision whether to join or not. So I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Scott. We appreciate all of the kind words. I will add that we could do none of this without the support of the transit agencies that we have. Having dedicated transit agencies that want to see this move forward, as well as allocating the staffing and the time to be able to be in these meetings, makes an entire world of difference. And we very much appreciate, all of the folks from the teams that joined, as well as the manufacturers who were able to come in and give time as well to move that forward.
Yeah, and I could just add that I know my colleagues may be on the call. I'm not sure if Ralph and the folks from YRT, Kyle and the team, but I'm sure they would share in the points that I've raised here today. So from a transit agency perspective, not only a Brampton perspective, these were kind of the benefits that we saw.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yep.
And so I'm going to dive into, Christina, we can actually go to the next slide. I'm going to dive into the scope of work for phase two. Now, this scope of work has been approved, and we're in partnership with AIEQ. So you'll see here, there's essentially 2 major areas that we're looking at. And this is building off of a lot of that information we received as we're looking at reports. It's building off of a lot of the information from phase one, a lot of the lessons learned, and a lot of the data that we received as well. The first report here you're going to see, which our team has already launched into and we're beginning the work on. This report delves into the analysis of vehicle efficiency and performance trends over time, reviewing factors including driving patterns, route conditions, and charging behaviors. Additionally, we're going to be examining charger interoperability issues and shedding light on the challenges and proposing potential solutions to be able to streamline that charging process and enhancing the overall efficiency. The second report we're doing, and these are going to be at essentially every 2 months, we're going to be releasing another report. And as project partners, you would receive that information as it's coming out. So in our quarterly meetings, you'd be receiving that information. The next one is around battery recycling opportunities. So this report's going to undertake exploring emerging opportunities and challenges surrounding battery recycling within those electric buses. We're going to dive into existing recycling methods, techniques, and regulatory framework. As well, this report's going to offer perspectives on sustainable disposal practices and recycling initiatives and potential partnerships, providing transit agencies with actionable recommendations. For thermal management, this report's going to explore more of the proactive measures and strategies employed by manufacturers to mitigate those thermal risks. And it's going to highlight some best practices and emerging technologies in thermal management, including including advanced battery cooling systems, thermal insulation, and temperature monitoring mechanisms. As we look at addressing range barriers for this particular report, we're going to review strategies aimed at addressing range barriers and dive into methods of optimizing the range while minimizing battery usage. Cybersecurity recommendations, I feel like I can't say this enough. The more connected these vehicles are, the more important thinking about cybersecurity is. For this particular report, we're going to offer recommendations specifically designed for battery bus fleets and reviewing existing cybersecurity measures and identifying potential vulnerabilities. And the report is going to provide some guidance and recommendations to those transit agencies. Support for expanded operations. So as folks are switching from diesel buses to battery electric buses, which includes the chargers and the infrastructure and all of those counterparts, what we want to look into is insights into operational implications. And this report's going to look at maintenance considerations unique to BEVs, including battery health monitoring, electrical system inspections, and software updates. So really kind of what differences you're going to see that you need to take into account for when you're thinking about transitioning to this technology. In-depot pantographs. For this particular one, we're going to be examining existing standards, looking at protocols. We're going to discuss things around roof weight and load factor to be able to offer some recommendations and some information to those transit agencies to be able to optimize those charging operations. And then the final report we're looking at here is a vehicle to grid integration. This is something that folks are starting to have questions around, and we want this report to really focus on that technology and explore the potential of a vehicle to grid system and enhance that flexibility and resilience of the transit operations by leveraging that bidirectional flow between the vehicles and the grid. So this report will really look into the infrastructure, including communication protocols, smart charging algorithms, and grid interaction mechanisms. We can go to the next slide. So the next slide, what we're looking at is empirical analysis. So we're really looking at that data. And this is going to run in parallel to the reporting elements. We're looking at launching this with the official launch of this project a bit later this year. The first one that I'm going to talk about is the empirical analysis work. So we're going to be conducting empirical analysis of BEVs similar to what we did in our phase one with our transit agencies and looking at the vehicles and the chargers at the site of the asset owner, so at the site of those transit agencies, essential for making feasibility and implementation planning. We're going to be offering this opportunity for up to 10 transit agencies. We just wanted to put a bit of a cap on it because we know that there's a lot of interest in this project. So we didn't want to be like every single person. So essentially, we're looking for 10 transit agencies who would have interest in that and confirming their current performance aligns with their expectations. Additionally, we're going to be looking at battery degradation. For the battery degradation, this analysis is going to be looking at how the battery degrades over time and under different conditions. So really being able to look across Canada and what weather conditions, what storage looks like, things of that, and how it's really impacting those batteries. We're also going to have an opportunity with this one to be able to look at batteries that are maybe freshly in service, new, as opposed to BEVs that have been on the road for a bit longer and have had maybe more deep cycling, more of a lifespan. Another one here we have is the diesel to electric powertrain conversion efficiency. And Gara, I see you there as well. So this would be working a bit with Gara to be able to analyze that converted electric bus in comparison to the performance of a purpose-built 40-foot BEV. Understanding that the potential benefits and challenges in this type of technology is going to be extremely important for transit agencies going forward. Additionally, we're going to be looking at a data repository in this. So being able to extensive, comprehensive regional repository within this project to be able to play a pivotal role in being able to develop future implementation and feasibility plans and really be able to put that data head to head and give folks an opportunity to be able to even, there's the possibility here of being able to compare your data to other transit agencies in a real-time situation. So if you move to the next slide, this outlines essentially what we're looking at as far as timelines are concerned. You see here on the top line, you've got lots of little dots. These are the reports that are going to be coming out along the path of this project, which has a very firm end date of December 2025. So that way you know the commitment that you have as a transit agency coming into this space. And in parallel to that, you'll see the empirical analysis work. We're going to be doing quarterly reports on those items. So that will be happening at the same time. You also see here, you've got our launch. There's 2 webinars that are captured in here as well. These will be an opportunity to be able to disseminate some information to the broader group. But of course, that will be anonymized and there will be, some filtering down. So you won't get the detail and the excitement level as we're going through if you're part of those quarterly project steering meetings, if you're a member in here, and of course, having the opportunity to have your input, to give your feedback as we go. We move to the next slide. So here, this is a sneak peek at what we're looking at on our phase 3. There will definitely be some more information that will be following for this particular item. But I wanted to kind of let you know that this is coming down the pipe. And maybe this is something that you're also interested in. There's nothing that would eliminate you as a person who's joining our EBus Phase 2 from also joining our EBus Phase 3. Depending on where you're at around automated and autonomous items. Because as you see here, we're looking at automated charging guidance, autonomous driving level 4, and inductive charging commercialization for this project. We're going to be running essentially 2 different streams on this. The first one is automated guidance with inductive charging implementation. And then the second, and these again will be running in parallel, will be autonomous battery electric in-depot deployment. So looking at that in-depot route that happens for those buses and being an autonomous feature, be able to hopefully save folks some time. Both of these stages are going to have these wonderful steps that start all the way from member engagement. I wanted to bring that up here today because a few folks will probably be asked to join a focus group that we're going to be planning a little later this year to be able to look at where folks are with the technology, where the technology is. That's going to give us an opportunity for the technology assessment, gap analysis, and then we'll be looking at developing partnership agreements, looking for funding, as well as then moving into retrofitting and integrating. And then, very importantly, looking at the performance monitoring and the data collection. But another item that we want to include at the end of these is looking at the opportunity for scaling and long-term implementation planning. Some of that work will include being able to work with our project partners to be able to help seek funding for their own opportunities or expanded opportunities. And if you want to flip to the next slide, I'll talk about next steps, and we can move to, yeah, there, perfect. Okay, so what we've done so far, a little bit of graphic here. So we've done a lot of outreach to transit agencies. I've had a lot of one-on-ones. If you are interested and you have not had a one-on-one with me yet, in the final slide today is my contact information. I encourage you to reach out. Happy to sit down and go over things in a bit more detail, talk about maybe your interests, any concerns you would have. I had consultation sessions with many CUTRIC members interested in joining to find out if there was additional information or elements that they wanted to be added to the scope before the scope was finalized. Wonderfully, this created an opportunity for flagging of things that maybe folks have heard about that they thought could be of a lot of interest. The vehicle to grid integration was one of those items that came out of those consultation sessions. We also collaborated with AIEQ. We really wanted to expand our reach within Quebec, and we scheduled those meetings. And at that point, then we were able, and we received enough information and feedback to be able to draft and execute a scope of work. And then if you flip to the next slide, perfect. You will see that we are convening again today, as well as I still have some additional one-on-ones, and I'm going over that project scope with folks. And then as we move forward, we're looking at commitment from interested project partners is our next step. So I just wanted to flag as well that this project is free to join now as part of your CUTRIC membership. And I have now in big bold and underlines, because once this project is launched, and we're moving forward, there would be a small cost of joining to be able to come in at that point, just because of some of the operational work that would be involved in being able to come in. And we really want to benefit the folks who are able to join on now and be a part of that, get your empirical analysis, things of that nature. It is a closed door project. So that means that access to the results before the rest of CUTRIC's membership will happen within the project partners. So you're going to be hearing in those quarterly project steering committee meetings, you're going to be hearing information in real time. You're going to be involved in the emails and those conversations. And for folks who aren't part of the project, you'll get some kind of information in those webinars going forward. And then if you're not part of CUTRIC's membership, you would have to wait until after the project closed to see what's disseminated down. So then the very next thing you're going to see is really the launch of those project steering committee meetings that will be quarterly. I know for some of our projects, we've done faster rates. We've done anything from, I would say, probably a bi-weekly meeting all the way up to monthly. We've done quarterly. In our phase one, we were working within a quarterly for the main steering and the technical, but we had 4 different meetings in that space. So while we were only meeting quarterly, there were 4 different meetings on each quarter. So we're looking at just one main to really be able to give the folks who are involved in this the most benefit for their time. And what I'm going to do at this point, because I know that there is some conversation that involves the CUTRIC membership here, I am going to hand it over to Majdi at this point, who will be able to speak a bit to CUTRIC membership. And then after Majdi's finished, I'll just do a quick close, and that's all.
Thank you so much, Jess. And also, Scott has been very helpful looking at all these slides and understanding where the phase 2 project of the EBus is going. And for folks who are not kind of member of CUTRIC, I wanted to take a couple of minutes, maybe longer, and talk about membership, the values that CUTRIC membership can provide to everyone. So Christina, if we can go to the next slide, please. So before talking about the benefits, I wanted to kind of share with you the diverse community that CUTRIC has. So we do have transit agency, and this is the reason CUTRIC is doing all of this. And that includes transit agency and transit operator who are supporting the transit agencies. And then next biggest category is industry members, OEM. And that includes small startup companies to international companies with offices worldwide. And recently this year, we launched a new subcategory focused on software and cloud-based tech companies. We also have members from construction, engineering, and consultancy background, and they engage with CUTRIC on some of the commercialization and demonstration projects, but also they sometimes bid on RFP, and they basically engage with funding activities. We also have a number of members that come from utilities, and they also participate on some of the projects, but mostly they're interested in our PPU committee, which is power provider and utilities, that we'll cover in the next slide. And we also have universities, colleges, academia, and earlier this year we launched a new initiative that focused on highlighting and showcasing all the research and development projects by these members. Other than that, we have nonprofit and also government from municipal, provincial, and federal levels. And if we can go to the next slide, Christina, please. So some of the values that we provide to our members is access to members-only monthly committees. That includes our members meeting that highlight new members and talk about the work that CUTRIC is doing, whether it's advocacy or funding effort, to our technical committees that happens on a monthly basis, including our zero emission bus committee and power provider and utilities. We also, as a member, we offer you exclusive sponsorship opportunities, and we have an event coming up in October that I will cover in the next slide. Beside that, members have the opportunity to co-bid and consultant request for a proposal, and that's handled by our ZEP consultant team. We also, CUTRIC publishes a knowledge series, and that includes a report that covers innovation in transit, zero emission transit, and smart mobility. Also, as Scott mentioned earlier, that CUTRIC does lots of advocacy and lobbying effort, and all of our members have the opportunity to contribute to that message. We do consultation sessions with our members, transit agencies, industry, and every other category of membership. And we go to the government at provincial and federal level with these unified messages. Other than that, I just wanted to say that our committees and events, including our conference, is a great opportunity for any company to network and look at new business development opportunities. And if we can go to the next slide, Christina, please. Here, I wanted to kind of showcase some of the reports that the researchers at CUTRIC publishes from time to time. As an example, we recently collaborated with CIB on a report that covers non-traditional mode of transportation that included aerial transportation like gondolas and their potential application in urban cities. We also looked at electric ferry operation and also micro shared mobility that focus on technologies like electric bicycles. Another report we launched, I think 2 months ago, is a summary report on Smart Rail Innovation Program, where CUTRIC identified 8 areas where we think the federal government should invest and innovate in rail, whether it's passenger or freight rail. And that report is also available to the public. It's free, and you can find it on our website. If we can go to the next slide, please. Just wanted to kind of showcase one of 2 committees that are chaired by transit members. So the first one is the Zero Emission Bus Committee, which is chaired by Erin Cook from Winnipeg Transit. This monthly committee is considered to be a one-stop shop for ZIP knowledge for the Canadian transit agencies, OEM, consultant, and academia. So they come together every month to talk about updated information from ZIP procurement, deployment, and performance across Canada. And the topic covers better electric buses, hydrogen fuel cell, and renewable natural gas. And we look at topics from business cases to challenges, deployment, supply chain issues, and government policy and strategy in supporting the advancement of these technologies. And if you can go to the next slide, and this is our power provider and utilities committee, which is right now, there's been a change in the last few weeks. So this committee is chaired by Sanupal from Burrs and McDonnell. And this committee is really a platform to bring transit agencies and utilities together so they can share information about the expected demand on the grid and the way we can decarbonize the grid by looking at new emerging technologies. Also, this committee provides critical data to utilities by looking at, as I said, the expected demand, their expansions, and also utility-led regulation and information regarding to energy and fuel provision for zero-emission bus and electrification. Also, if we go to the following slide as well, I want to talk about some of the resources that we share with our members, which is our ZEP database. So we have a lead scientist here at CUTRIC who collect data on better electric buses, hydrogen fuel cell, and compressed natural gas. So this report is compiled based on feedback or a survey we collect from transit agency across the Canadian landscape. And the tool is intended to help transit agencies and industry members to basically become familiar with the state of electrification in Canada. So the report and the information that feeds into the report highlight the stages of zero-emission bus technology adoption from pronouncement to purchase, going through procurement and deployments on the roads. And because there's no other sources or comprehensive and reliable information in Canada, CUTRIC wanted to share that with all of our members. And I believe that The earlier version of this report is typically also shared with the public through our website. And the next slide shows an example of this database. If you look at some of these graphs, it shows the number of battery electric buses that are actually deployed in Canada and the breakdown between, for example, battery electric buses and hydrogen fuel cell. Also, it can provide to members a special version of this report if you want to look at these deployment province by province or at a smaller scale, so you can focus on targeted business development efforts. Then the next slide, which basically highlights CUTRIC advocacy effort. And again, I wanted to thank Scott from Brampton for bringing this up. So this is really something that CUTRIC invests so much time on, and we have a GR team who's always busy advocating the municipal, provincial, and federal governments. As you probably heard last week, the federal government announced Canada Public Transit Fund, and CUTRIC's role in that program is trying to bridge the Zero Emission Transit Fund, which ends in December 2025, and be able to extend and recapitalize the funds so we can help more transit agencies with their planning and feasibility studies, but also if transit agencies already are placed in order for procurement, we want to make sure there's continuation of these procurement efforts and this fund until this new program comes into effect. And then if we go to the last slide, Christina, please. This is an exciting event. CUTRIC is hosting our second annual conference. So every year we have two conferences. The first one was focused on Smart Rail, which took place in March, and we have in-person conference in October 22nd and 23rd in Burlington, Ontario. So this conference will last for 2 days, and the topic covered during this event will include everything from thought and progress, looking at the electrification journey of transit agencies in Eastern and Western Canada. We're also looking at hydrogen supply chain and policies into integrated transit solution, looking at how we can integrate transit with rail operation. Other topic we're covering including inductive charging and emerging technology and how we can integrate them into transit operation, plus on-demand transit or carbon credit, and many other topics. So I'm going to drop the link to that event. If you haven't already registered, you can look at the website, and we also have interesting sponsorship and brand opportunities. And I guess that's all from me, Jess. I'll hand it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Majdi. And I do see 2 questions have popped into the chat that I didn't notice until Majdi was already speaking. So just to clarify with those, I am seeing the one Phase 2 and Phase 3, and they will be running concurrently. So Phase 3 will be probably a bit behind in the launch as opposed to Phase 2, but they will be running at the same time as opposed to the finish to start type of a timeline. And I see here another question about requirements in order to be part of Phase 2. There is not a requirement to currently have a BEB in operation. That just means obviously we wouldn't be able to do empirical analysis, but we know that transit agencies in all stages, it's really important for them to be able to access this information. So if you're a transit agency that's in the beginning stages and you're considering your purchase and your procurement of your BEBs and your charging infrastructure, and you want to be as informed as possible, this is a wonderful opportunity to be able to do that. Still have a seat at the table. Obviously, you wouldn't be able to provide data into the data repository, into the empirical analysis work of things, but you would still have access to some of that material as it's coming out. So I'm going to drop into the chat here. You will see my email. I'm also going to include my cell phone number. If you have an interest in this project, I encourage you to reach out, to be able to communicate that with me. We can put you on the list of folks who are very interested. I know I've seen a few emails popping in already. So I'm very excited to be able to launch into a formal quarterly steering committee meeting. That will be the official start, and we'll be able to start diving into the information and learning from each other. So I want to thank everyone very much for their time today. I am going to give you about 10 minutes back in your day. So hopefully if you have something back to back, that gives you an opportunity to grab a fresh cup of coffee and maybe go outside and breathe in a little fresh air. So thank you all very much. I appreciate your attendance today.
Thanks, Jess. Take care.